So what was the origin of your involvement with this project as a first narrative feature film? Why was this project right for you to take on at the time you did?
2018 was when I came onto the project. I was coming off of a documentary that was about outsiders trying to find a way to make sense of their past and enter their adulthood. This novel, I saw outsiders trying to find love. Trying to find love with another outsider, people living in the fringes of society. But I also saw a Uyghur character, which blew me away, because I'm like, wow, there's these production companies want to get behind a Uyghur story. And I also saw a story that replicated a story that my mom lived through. You know, she and I moved here when I was 5, and she worked Chinese restaurants and worked her way up and eventually achieved a material kind of American dream. She bought a house, a car, and a fur coat, you know. But there's a spiritual and emotional cost to her having done that. So,
what counter viewpoint to the current American immigration shutdown do you think the film expresses, since the book was written even before Trumpism?
Well, I think I'm glad that the book was written in 2014, and this movie's going to enter, you know, the film marketplace, audience viewership place, because I think it shows that the arc of history is long in this country. And, you know, U.S. immigration policy, if you're a student of history, you'll know that it swings to the left and right all the time. And unfortunately, we're at a place in history right now where, you know, the answer to the question of who gets to have a chance to try to make it in this country, to make a life here, the answer to that is very few people. So, you know, what I hope this film adds to the pantheon of immigration narratives, and, you know, narratives that touch on immigration, is that, you know, like, even if you do make it in this country, there's a cost to that. There's a cost to, you know, like how much community, happiness, love, you know, you're able to achieve easily. It's not just about socioeconomics and material gains, you know. It's about trying to find purpose in life.
What do you relate to most about Aisha as a storyteller? And what do you relate to most about Skinner for the same reasons?
Aisha has a lesson that she was that she internalized from her father, which is essentially, if you work hard enough, you can achieve anything.
Right.
Turns out that is a myth that she has had to grieve, and I relate to that. And you know, that's a coming of age story that I think most people live through in some form or another.
You're right.
You know, with Skinner, he is somebody who has had trouble finding community. I think the difference between these two characters is that Aisha, even though she's an outsider within this insular world of Chinatown, she still, you know, has a network of employees that she works with. She still speaks to people on a daily basis. Skinner self-isolates in this basement, and, you know, he's unable to see a way to connect with people. I've been in those periods of my life, and I've been in those periods of my life trying to get out of it, trying to start up relationships, not knowing how.
So light as illumination was an important element of cinema for you. We often view the final journey before death as a walk toward the light. In what way did you want light to illuminate both the relationship and personalities of the two characters?
Well, I think, you know, it's a very allegorical film in my mind. I think there's a story of two people who, you know, meet each other and, you know, wrestle within this relationship that they try to have. But I think there's also a story in what it means to both grieve people who have moved on to another life, and also try to figure out what they have to do on this earth before they move on to the next life. So I think this relationship is a little bit like that biblical story of, you know, wrestling with God, you know, wrestling with an angel. I think there's something that's more meaningful about this relationship than just, you know, a little short stint in which you get romance. I think these two people walk away having wrestled with God in a way through this relationship.
Excellent. Religion is used as a bridge in the film in the sense she seeks it again and comes away with a different point of view on her life. What has been your relationship with religion, if any, and what made sense to you about Aisha's seeking of truth?
For me, I was born and raised in communist China. Like my mom and I were not religious, but arriving in Rockford, Illinois when I was 8 years old, I got picked up by a Baptist Sunday school bus that would come into, like the apartment complex where I lived, ship children out to this Baptist Sunday school. And that's where I learned about hell. And because they played a tape that was supposedly recording, the sounds of hell for this room full of children. And I was terrified, and I read the Bible, every night as a way of trying to shore up my salvation. Luckily, I discovered Pokemon and skateboarding, and that got me obsessed and, with a different thing. But so, I had a brief stint in which I got kind of scared straight by religion for a couple of years. But, despite having, become an iconoclast countercultural skater who wanted nothing to do with religion in my teenage years, when I got older, I understood that it's kind of a weird, modern life is strange, and there is a little bit of a spiritual vacuum, I think people try to fill that in many different ways. And I see the value and I see why religion has been a part of human civilization for so long. I'm not formally religious, but I've joined a secular community choir recently because I think there's something about communing and gathering and all sort of singing as a way of communing with something greater than us as individuals, and try to connect with something kind of higher. There's value in that. Yeah. And so with Aisha, I think she kind of has a similar journey, right? Like she spurns the religion of her parents, but then when she gets to a point in her life where it's like, where does she turn to anymore? She tries religion, and she decides that's not right for her either. Right. But that doesn't mean she ends the film, being kind of, that doesn't mean she ends the film spurning this need for something more meaningful, than what's on this earth. I think she's still seeking that at the end of the film.
It's interesting. The way you handled that was exactly how you answered that. The way, the delicate balance that you created in that scene was very much in that answer that you just gave me. I really liked that scene a lot. Is narrative feature films the direction you want to keep pursuing, or will you just do films in the order of your interest and career journey?
Being a filmmaker is not a road that you go on. It's what it feels like is you're putting like little turtles on like several different paths that are winding and labyrinthine, and you're like, I don't know which turtle is gonna finally like make it to the end, but that's what it is. So I have several fiction and documentary projects in development. Yeah.
Excellent. What was the feeling, considering your background and history, of being part of the Academy Awards? What did you observe about it that seemed like a dream, and what reality about it was really surprising?
I think the dream part of it was, that's a perfect word, because it almost felt, in a dreamlike way, dissociative and not real. Like it felt literally, like I was floating through this experience that was out of body almost, in a way, you know. Right. And that includes the campaigning part of it. And the campaigning part of it was a little bit of a kind of interesting, for me, I treated it like an anthropological experience in which I'm like, so this is how the sausage is made. This is what it looks like to, be a politician in a way with, these, with campaign financing, so to speak, from a studio behind you who's like sending you out to go glad hand. It's in like, and I'm not going to say I wasn't interested in trying to, play the game, because at the end of the day, if you get the nomination, your film gets seen, and your film can go do more impact in the world. Right. But I did remember why I wanted to make films in the first place, which is to make a difference in the world, So it was all a means to an end in a way. Yeah.
I saw you, I think last time, right before that maelstrom started, so I was just curious. Finally, what do you hope audiences realize the most about preparation for the next life, no matter where they are in life or what status they have?
I think we're on this earth for, if we're lucky, a certain number of decades. And, not everybody has to answer the question, why? Why are we on this earth? But I think if you're lucky, you do have to answer that. And because it might lead you to live a life that's more intentional. It might force you to answer the question, what am I going to do with my time that I have here?
This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2025.